Okay, so thank you for this conversation today, Kelly. So our topic for this conversation is we're talking about mining for value, particularly in the context of municipal budgeting and managing revenues. Can you expand a little bit on what you mean with mining for value? What are the challenges that responds to?
So I think, like, especially right now, there's this opportunity given COVID, right, with this big pause that we're facing, for municipalities to maybe look inwardly and ask themselves the big why. Like, why does a municipality exist? And for me, it's all around that citizen empowerment or quality of life for citizens. And for me, the value is in looking at what it is that your citizens value in their lives, but then really taking a long, hard look at the services or the programs that you provide and how well they align with achieving the things that your citizens want. Too often now, I think in traditional municipal budgeting, it's all about looking at everything that we did last year and how are we going to go replicating that next year. And it's just moving costs around. So something's going to cost more. Let's say building a road's going to cost more because we know gravel's more expensive next year. Well, okay, so we add that to the mix. And you do that for all your services, and ultimately you end up with, maybe we need a 5% tax increase, and then you go around trying to find ways to get that down. Where if you took the value approach and ask citizens the things that they value, you're going to get a list of things that have varying degrees of value. And the mining part is seeing how you can work together as an organization across departments, across services and programs to maybe do things differently in the areas of greatest importance or greatest value. It may mean stopping to do some things. Maybe municipalities are in part of a program that someone else could do better. So take some courage to do that, but I think we're at the point in time where we could and should be doing that.
I mean, it sounds pretty reasonable to me. What do you think holds people back from doing this now, though? And what's currently being done, would you say?
Right. So it's that confirmation bias, I think, that exists right now. And it's not just in municipal environment, private, non-for-profit. Everybody has this bias that maybe what they're doing is what they should be doing. So you tend to want to just continue on, and change is hard if you don't look at it as part of a continual improvement journey, which you should. There's fear of change and there's fear of big change. So this could be a big departure from what is typically done. So the tendency is to want to just kind of stay in your safe space, something that you know really, really well, and probably something you do really, really well. But just because you do something well doesn't mean that it's the right thing to be doing, right? So I think that's the biggest difficulty is it's a culture shift, right? So I would be the first person to tell a municipality that this isn't something I suggest could happen overnight, and that you should be looking at incremental change and incremental success. It might take a full business planning cycle, 4 years before you're really nailing it, but every effort that you make is something that you should be happy with, because you're again mining for that value along the way and providing what you think are the right programs at the right level for your citizens.
So how would you say then, how do we gauge returns in services or programs? So what are essentially, what are the steps to mining for value, would you say?
Right. So I mentioned a couple of them. I think first off, and I'll be talking mostly in the municipal environment, but this could look very similar for private or non-for-profit, anyone, families even. I would start with that big why, right? So start, why do you exist? What is it that you're trying to achieve, not just today, but longer term? And then the next piece is, what are you doing today? What are you trying to do today to achieve those goals? And empower your staff, your resources internally to rank that effort to see how well it's achieving the things that you want. And what'll happen is that value will start becoming very evident in that when you do the ranking, some things are going to be on the bottom. And it doesn't necessarily mean you get rid of them, but those some different questions come into play as to, is this the right business that we should be in? Is there ways that we can marry this with another program to get some more value? So that's typically the next step, is to see where your value lies. The next thing is that courage to say, we now have some data, we have to turn it into knowledge to make decisions, right? So you need to now start saying things like, let's take a municipality, for example. Recreation might look very different going into the future, given all these private providers that are out there, right? Maybe a municipality intentionally builds infrastructure with a private public partnership happening inside of it, and the private part starts driving some of the revenue required to provide more of that public option. I don't know what it looks like, but just to really start thinking outside the box in provision of these programs. And again, I'll mention that continuous improvement mode. The mindset of the organization starts changing if you get the right people kind of embracing the change, in that continual innovation piece, that continual improvement strategies start coming forward, and people really embrace, more than they maybe have in the past, the role of a public servant. Traditionally, public servants have not been the place that has been, innovative or creative. We've really been kind of stuck in a bit of a mold of, you've heard the word bureaucracy, and they're really resistant to change and risk averse. Well, I think it's time to start really up in our game as far as being creative.
What would you suggest is the best way to kind of get into that a little bit, how to deal with resistance to change?
Yeah, I think you need to always be answering what's in it for the person that you're trying to change, right? So in my experience at the municipal level, there's been this almost an us versus them mentality when you talk about council versus administration. And it plays out in the papers, right, in a big way. I mean, we live in the greater Edmonton region, and there's not a day doesn't go by that there's something in the paper chastising the way government did this or the way government did that. And sometimes it's even the elected officials that are the ones, calling out administration. So I think the way you have to approach this is some sort of greater governance kind of strategy or narrative, in that done well, I think everyone sees some benefit, right? So the citizens should see some benefit in that. At the end of the day, if you do this well and you mine for value, you won't see these arbitrary cuts that I think I was talking about in the last video. You're going to start seeing, moving things up the value chain, which means you don't have to ask for things at the lower value area, right? So you're foregoing asking for those taxes. So the taxpayer should see minimal to no tax increases for a while, just a reevaluation of what you have and trying to maximize that value. The council of the day, that should lead to some pretty happy citizens, which is something that they should really enjoy. But also the fact that probably what drives this is a really good engagement with the community on what they want. But council then rolls up their sleeves and creates a long-term strategic plan. Here's our plan. Here's what we thought we heard from you citizens. here's the goals that we want to achieve over time. And done well, they would really embrace their role in that strategic plan. It becomes something they actually use and embrace and enjoy, instead of just being put on a shelf. Way to go, us. We have a strategic plan. It's something that they actually use, because the next step and what's in it for administration is, with absolute clear direction and the clarity of purpose, then, building a business plan and working in those programs is easy, and they should be able to find that alignment. And if they don't, it's up to them as leaders of an organization to make different decisions, or allocate differently. So I just think there's a lot of teamwork and a lot of alignment in purpose when you do this really well. So I think that that's something that you need to embrace at the outset. And, I'm not a change management credentialed professional, but I've done it a lot in my day. So if you're, when you go down this road, you need to start identifying those things up front. What's in it for the different audience or different stakeholder, and find something for them. So you might have to have some specific strategies around different stakeholders. But if you embrace that big picture about, why are we in the business as municipalities? Well, it's to provide well-being for citizens, and just use that as your goalpost or your guiding post for everything.
Yeah. I really like your emphasis on the aspect of collaboration and looking at the big picture, and how everybody can kind of cooperate in this process of making sure that the right changes are being brought about that benefits everybody in society, and all these things, particularly when you're talking about municipalities. I'm curious to what you think would be really important for municipalities to keep in mind, so that they can get into this mindset of wanting to mine for value. Is it a mindset? Are there some practical things that you feel like are the most important that to really get to that goal?
Yeah, I think that for municipalities, it's again, maybe I'll go back to that confirmation bias. Traditionally, in my mind right now, I'm thinking of a visual that's been present throughout my career, and it's a vending machine. Lots of people think, residents think that all they do is pay taxes, right? And they don't really have a good grasp on what it is that they get for their taxes. So the narrative needs to change from a municipal standpoint. They need to start changing that perspective, and that there's public servants in that machine, that faceless machine, who probably are also residents of the municipality, or a large portion of them are. And they've embraced the fact that they are public servants and get lots of motivation from that. It's a different sector than anywhere else. I mean, you can't legitimately, I think, compare private business with public enterprise. It's just not a fair comparison. The services and programs are much different. There's so many things that a municipality does that the private marketplace would never touch, just because the returns aren't there. So the returns have to be looked at much differently as a municipality. And I think right now maybe there's a bit of a checkbox where these municipalities do these satisfaction surveys. You don't hear a lot about them. But really, I think those have to be really important tools going forward, in that alignment to, again, the big why. Why are we in business? We are in business to provide well-being. And what's an instrument that we can use that will give us the temperature check on how we're doing? Well, satisfaction surveys, right? How are we doing? And those have to ask questions maybe differently than we have in the past. If you ask citizens whether they're happy with their taxes, I know the answer. Darryl, you know the answer. Everybody on this planet knows the answer before we ask the question. So why do we ask the question? I don't know what value there is in that, because we know people right now want more for less. And if you open that door, that opens a narrative that is, I don't think, really impactful on what it is that we bring to the table as a municipality. Sure, we should always be looking to do things more efficiently and effectively. But when you blow past the relevancy conversation around your programs and what value they bring, I think you do yourself a disservice. So I don't know if that really gets to your question. I hope it does. But what do municipalities need to do a little differently? I think they need to embrace the fact that they have a really intimate relationship with their consumer, so to speak, and it's a citizen. But you better take that relationship to heart and start treating it a little bit differently. Open yourself up to be vulnerable. Like these are the things we're doing. We're not sure we're doing the right things. You tell us. And we'll be definitely willing to, it's a responsibility we have to listen to you, but our next responsibility is to adjust accordingly. So, be open to be different, all with the thought of being better.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what you were saying about the importance of constantly thinking about the why, that really very much corresponds to what you've been saying about mining for value. Where does value lie? How do we really understand it? And a lot of that is tied to the purpose that organizations or municipalities have in the first place in doing what they do. So to kind of just round things off then, I'm wondering if there are any kind of final thoughts that you want to explain about this idea of mining for value, or even the kinds of changes or the things that you'd like to see moving forward. Anything around that?
Yeah, sure. Maybe go back to just, this is a really big opportunity. I'm like everyone else. This really sucks being in this COVID environment. But wearing that being better hat, it has really afforded us an opportunity to think about what being on the other side of this looks like. And there are some municipalities in the capital region that are starting to embrace that in a pretty big way. St. Albert's doing some really cool things. City of Edmonton's starting to think about priority-based budgeting. Fort Saskatchewan, what does the other side look like? And with this environment we have with this current provincial government, I'm quite sure they're not done with tinkering with the assessment model, tinkering with the revenue mix for municipalities. So right now is the opportune time to be ready for those changes that are inevitably still going to hit us even after we get on the other side of COVID. So, we had prime time to start thinking about, a big rethink. And, we have some local expertise around well-being. My friend Mark Anielski has literally written the book on genuine well-being and done some work at the municipal level. So, is there a big opportunity to maybe even be that region that's what we're known for, is, capitalizing on understanding our role as municipal government to provide well-being for our citizens. And that's what we're going to be about. In a perfect world, I see always municipalities, in as far as government entities go, local municipalities, I think they drive that innovation more than the province or the feds. But it would be really cool to see municipalities taking the lead, but it start to filter up. I'd be fascinated to see what a well-being conversation would look like at the provincial level. If we thought there was opportunity in municipal budgets to do things a little bit differently, enormous orders of magnitude opportunities at provincial level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, again, thank you for this conversation. And I'm hopeful that, for people who are watching this or hearing about this, that they also get inspired to kind of follow in your footsteps in a sense, or want to get in touch with you. But yeah, thank you.